pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Start with approval of the agenda.
Madam President, I move we approve the agenda as presented with the following amendments. Number one, additional certified and classified personnel actions as presented, item number E-3. And number two, add item number E-4-G, consider approval of the site lease agreement and memorandum of lease between oh my goodness, it's Monday. Unified School District number 457 and T-Mobile Central LLC.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your right hand. All opposed? Motion passed. And we will move on to, we do public comment first for recognition. Let's do the public comments real quick. Go with Tammy Riggs.
I will try to use my teacher voice so you guys can hear me. My name is Tammy Riggs, and I'm a community member in Garden City and a teacher in our public school system here. And I wanted to talk to you about the COVID plan that you're going to be looking at today. Right now, when we look at our community level, our level is red, which if you look at what that means masks are highly recommended. If you look at the transmission level, it looks even worse. Just about the whole state of Kansas is red, which indicates that it's highly transmissible right now. And the fact that school has started and we've got students and staff in the buildings, it is going to start to spread through the buildings. I hope that's not the case, but I fear it's going to happen because it's already happening at my building. And interesting enough, I found out that the Kansas Department of Health and Environment does have COVID-19 testing guidance for K through 12 for this school year, and it came out August 15th, 2022. So I think they're also looking at the different levels and thinking maybe we need to do a little planning. And I have an extra copy if you guys wanted to look at it. You might have already seen it. Now, the reason I wanted to talk was I was looking at our plan for last year. At the end of school last year, the level looked great. It was green, even our community was very green. It's not that way right now. And I would highly recommend, I think we need to stick with this plan, just change it to 22-23. We can eliminate the tracing, because I know we're not doing contact tracing, and maybe add in how we're looking at quarantine right now. If a child is positive, they stay at home for 5 days. Then if their symptoms are gone and they feel better, they come back masked for 5 days. I believe you're also saying that if a classroom has 5 or more people who are also positive, that might be when it turns from a yellow to a red. And that's where the whole class might have to wear a mask for those 10 days, and those positive people have to stay home for 5, and then they can come back for 5. I really would like to see the board really look at this plan again and say, maybe we need to stick with it. It's a great plan. You guys did some good planning when you came up with it. And I'd like to see us stay with this at least until our COVID levels look better in Finney County and Garden City. Thank
you. Next, we have Summer Miller.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to start by introducing myself because there's a few of you that do not know who I am. I teach, my name is Summer Miller. I've taught orchestra here in Garden City this is my 21 and a half year because I started teaching in January of 2001. I have dedicated these last 21 and a half years to loving on kids, encouraging them and teaching them to love playing a stringed instrument. But you might be wondering, why did she start teaching in January? And I would like to share my story of how I came to teach in Garden City, because I think it's relevant to our current situation with the 5th grade program. Sorry. Turn that off. I'm going to tell you my story because not many people still remember how I got here. Many of the parents of the current 5th graders personally experienced the situation I'm about to share with you. They were in high school when this happened. I have several former students that have contacted me about the 5th grade program, and they're worried and upset, and so that's why I'm here. I got my job because of the situation, much what we're experiencing now. In the fall of 2000, students and parents excitedly looked at their schedule for the upcoming year and were shocked and dismayed to find out that the orchestra, grades 5 through 12, was not on anybody's schedule. Students and other community members then flooded this very boardroom in protest. Musicians and music teachers in our community and in the district banded together, including they even recruited the band director that was at the community college at the time. And they all worked together to piece and patch together enough teachers to cover all of the classes until an actual teacher could be found. That teacher, as it turns out, was me. The orchestra director from Fort Hays University visited the orchestra that I was student teaching with up in Shawnee Mission. And he shared with me that Garden City really needed an orchestra teacher. My brother had lived out in Montezuma for a time, and I was like, I'm not moving to Western Kansas. What is this? You know, I came out, I realized if I wanted a job, I would have to apply. I applied, I interviewed. As soon as my interview was over, Dr. Lentz or Mr. Lentz drove me around town. He was then the deputy superintendent. He gave me a tour of Garden City. He brought me back to central office. I signed my contract. And then all of this happened even before I walked across to get my diploma for my undergrad. Okay. I began teaching the first week of January in 2001, and the rest is history. So I met my husband, we got married, all that stuff. So I ask you now, why 21 and a half years later, are we still trying to cut out parts of this program? I don't get it. It's backward movement. The board voted only 1 year ago to keep this program in the district. Many of you here were a part of that decision. People in this community want 5th grade instrumental and vocal music programs. Garden City schools have a long history of musical excellence. In fact, our orchestra program is one of the oldest in the state. I think Beloit has us beat, but we have one of the oldest in the state. But the programs in general have become stagnant over the last 5 to 10 years because this entire program has been pieced together for too long. We've got a person doing this, we've got a person doing that. It's a patchwork, it's a mess. And we've been putting on, I liken that too, we've been putting Band-Aids on the dam, and now the dam is bursting. And this is the result. And unfortunately, our students are the ones that are getting caught in the middle of this mess. Haley and I went and did recruiting this last spring. She has 86 kids that were all excited to be in 5th grade orchestra, and then nothing. And that was, if I'm correct, that was the most students that she's ever had enrolled. And that's not counting the country schools. That is the largest number of orchestra kids we've had excited about orchestra since she started here. And not only us, but band and choir also. But we haven't added any additional teachers to cover these sections of classes. If the demand were this high in any other activity or sport, coaching staff would be added to support the interest of the students. Instead, it's required that the beginning band and orchestra teacher travel all over the district to teach. Haley and Angela both are at 6 buildings this year. And that's too much. They're the only 2 people in this district that have to do that. I have to travel from a 6A high school with a big program to the middle school to teach 7th and 8th grade. I love what I do. I love teaching at the middle school, but I am only giving each building half of what they deserve. They need a person that can give them their full attention. Our district is large, not only in numbers, but in square miles. We have a 5th and 6th grade building. We have 5th and 6th graders in 5 buildings, and one of them is 14 miles out in the country. And that takes a while to get there and get back. Why should one teacher be required to meet all of those students' needs? We need to divide the workload more equitably between 2 or 3 people. It's time to invest in our students' future. We should be adding positions, 2 to 3 positions, instrumental and vocal, to the music department so our students and these programs can begin to thrive and flourish again. Our students have spoken, they want to be involved. Let's add the appropriate amount of teaching positions so these students can be involved.
Thank you.
Next, we have Haley Rottenberger.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Haley Rotenberger. This is my 6th year teaching 5th through 8th grade orchestra in the district. I currently teach orchestra at Kenneth Henderson Middle School, Charles Stone's and Bernadine Sitz Intermediate Centers, as well as Jenny Barker, A. Hubert, and Plymouth Elementary Schools. During these past 5 years, scheduling orchestra between 6 schools has been a constant challenge. Some years it was resolved through the busing of students to one location. Although this alleviated the teaching schedule, it took away valuable instruction time in core classes for the students. Other times it was resolved by having the general music teacher also teach band and orchestra. Unfortunately, band and orchestra is so highly specialized, finding a music teacher that specializes in all 3 concentrations is nearly impossible. Because of these past challenges and the current ratio of 1 teacher for 6 schools, the music department sought to make changes over the summer of 2022. The orchestra department had proposed that our assistant high school orchestra director, Miss Yenna Kong, teach 5th and 6th grade orchestra at Jenny Barker and A. Hubert to distribute the workload more evenly. Either the lead high school orchestra director, Summer Miller, or myself would teach at Plymouth, depending on scheduling. These ideas were presented to high school administration in the hopes that a meeting among all administrators involved would bring about a positive solution for this recurring issue. But last Tuesday, August 16th, I was notified by administration that 5th grade orchestra had been cut. That afternoon, all 5th grade band and orchestra students' schedules were changed to accommodate this decision. It was during open house that many 5th graders discovered that they would not be in these classes. This decision does not align with the board's ruling to keep 5th grade band, orchestra, and choir in the district. I was very discouraged to hear that the administration's solution to a scheduling issue was to deprive hundreds of students of an educational opportunity. The music department would welcome an opportunity to provide solutions and work with administrators to ensure that our 5th graders receive the music education that they so rightly deserve. Thank you.
Move on to recognition.
Okay, pleased to be in front of you today to kind of, I guess, celebrate a recognition for Garden City High School. Over the summer, we were notified by the Kansas State Board of Regents that we were being named what they call an all-star school, along with several others across the state, for what we've been doing as far as our planning for seniors and for students throughout our high school to help prepare them for the next step, post-secondary step. And so with our programming that we've been doing and the hard work of counselors, and I've got a counselor here and also another staff member I'll introduce to you in just a second. We've been expanding our opportunities that we give to kids to really plan that next step, to get them set for what lies beyond high school. And so with all of the different things that we have started to add to our programming at the high school, what we've done to prepare kids for that post-secondary journey has really been elevated with the addition on our staff of this young lady here, Evelyn Irigoyen Aguirre. She is a former Buffalo who has come back through a partnership with Kansas State University. She is what we call a Kansas State career or college advisor, not career, college advisor. And in her role, she has a list of activities and deliverables that and types of programming that she has to provide to our kids, all aimed at them planning the next step, post-secondary planning. And so I'll let Evelyn talk a little bit about that for just a second.
Yeah, so as Mr. Norby said, my name is Miss Evelyn, or Evelyn Irigoyen. The kids call me Miss Evelyn, sorry. So my role is to work with all seniors one-on-one on a near peer model, advising model. So most of the rest of the advisors in Kansas, we are pretty young, recently graduated from college. So our goal is to ensure low-income, at-risk students, first-generation students have the opportunity to achieve their post-secondary plan. And we do this by meeting with them one-on-one, having group visits, going to their classrooms, holding assemblies, and different events. As mentioned by the Council Board of Regent, our award focused mostly on FAFSA workshop nights, college application week, and decision day or college signing day.
And so some of you participated in some of those events, whether it was the Apply Kansas event or the decision day in May. And that's great because we can provide some of these things at the high school, but a lot of our activities that you organize take a lot of community members, take a lot of input and help from people throughout our community. In addition to those things that she mentioned, this is Jennifer Meng, our lead counselor, is here, and she can kind of describe what we're doing this fall to help get our seniors that are there now ready to go on their post-secondary plan.
So we're so thankful for Evelyn because she does an amazing job, and what she brings to the Career Center and to our students is just huge. So take so much work off of what we used to do all together. So it's great. This fall, the big things, our big events are the College Planning Conference. So that's where all of the schools from, I don't know, the world, just kidding, but it just feels like it. Everybody comes and sets up tables and they speak with our students. For juniors and seniors, actually, it's just a junior and senior event. So several of your children will be involved in that. And then also counselors will be going in, well, we used to do the English classrooms. I'm not sure how we'll do that now with our change of schedule. Hopefully we won't have to go into the classrooms and we can do that more on one of our block days. We'll meet with all of the seniors, talk not only about college, because we know that that's not everybody's plan. We'll talk about our certification programs that they can get at our 2-year colleges, or any help that they can get throughout the year for senior stuff. So
we have a lot of things going on, and anytime that Garden City High School can be recognized by a group like the Board of Regents, I mean, their job is not necessarily recognizing high schools. Their job is post-secondary, it's colleges and university and trade schools. But for them to look at what we're doing and say, you guys are doing a great job holding these events to get kids ready to go for that next step, whether it's university or whether it's trade school or whether it's the workplace. Anytime we get that recognition from an outside organization that's not usually somebody that we partner with, we'll take it. And so we're pretty proud of that recognition, recognizing their efforts to provide that kind of programming and the contribution from people in the community to make those things happen. So we're pretty proud of the banner that we've got hanging in the Commons right now from the Board of Regents, and we just want to take a second and recognize the hard work of Evelyn and all the counselors.
Do you want to add something real quick?
Yep.
We are having our Senior Success Fair coming up on Tuesday, September 13th, where you are welcome to join us. We have invited college admissions representatives, military representative, workforce, or employers that provide scholarships, assistantships for students who are choosing to go to the workforce, and as well as scholarship providers to ensure students are looking at these scholarship applications and they're ready for the next semester when the scholarship season comes around. So we hope you can join us that evening.
Thank you for your support.
Congratulations. For all your hard work. Correspondence? We'll move on to the consent agenda.
Madam President, I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
In a second? I'll second. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your right hand. All opposed? Motion passed. And next is unfinished business. Brenda? Plan update. I have a special guest with me today. Michelle Scholl is not able to make it, so Trudy, the director of the health department, is here to answer any questions that I may not be able to answer. Well, Jason's taking care of my technical difficulties. I will just say that at the last board meeting, you asked us to consider being more concise and not so many pages with the COVID plan, and bring it back to the board. So Michelle and I have done that, and we have run some ideas by Shruti as well, to make sure that we're all on the same page and can support what we need to have in this plan. So it is down to 2 pages. So we worked really hard to try to get this more concise and just hit what had to be addressed. So with this plan, we do still have that at the very beginning, that if it does become necessary for administration to require preventative measures, so for example, our teachers are very sick and we need to close a classroom or do remote, that we can make those decisions. So that is a clause that will allow us to make those decisions at the very beginning. And that could be, it could be that Shruti calls and says, we need masks or something like that as well. But I'm gonna go through the bulk of the plan and then you can ask questions. So there is, mask will be optional unless it is following a positive diagnosis. So if it is a positive diagnosis, they must stay out for 5 days. Then on day 6, they have a choice. They can come back and wear a mask for 5 more days. So days 6 through 10, essentially wear a mask, or they can test on day 6. And if it's negative, they would not have to wear a mask. So that would be a choice. We will follow the CDC and Health Department guidance, and then Michelle has given us a hot link for that current guidance. And it does say 2019, but that is where they change it and update it, yeah. So that's a little confusing there. Modifying facilities for physical distancing, again, we just changed that to current CDC guidance. Hand washing etiquette will be followed. We'll just ensure optimal practices with our classes. Custodians will follow their cleaning protocols, and they are currently getting a list of whenever there's been a positive in a classroom. So we're currently doing that for them. We will not do contact tracing. The school nurse may test and identify cases, and they will follow whatever the current guidance for isolation is. So that may change, and we didn't want to stick to 5 days and then come back for 5 days with a mask in case it changed. So we put in there that we'll follow whatever the current guidance is on that. We will accept home COVID tests if they are positive, and we'll ask them to isolate if they have a positive that they've found at home. We are able to test for COVID as well as influenza, and that is available to students, staff, and household members. For vaccinations, we will work with the health department to provide immunization clinics if those are requested from our staff. And those will be optional, just like our flu vaccination clinics are optional. The rest of the document talks about students with disabilities. This has not changed. Coordinating with state and local health officials, that has not changed. We do have our testing strategy in collaboration with KDHE. That's where we get our supplies, and our grant is from there for our nurses and our testing supplies. all schools, we are not having a remote option at this time. We are going to offer school in person unless we hit a crisis, and then you guys are probably gonna know about it. But right now, our plan is to do in-person learning. Students and their families may choose to ask for a 504 plan, or they can put it in their IEP. Josh has, I think, a couple of those already where the children are going to stay homebound due to low immunocompromised positions. We do have a virtual school for middle and high, and some of these you might say, well, we know that, but that's one of the questions that they ask us to answer. So we just say we have that for all of middle and high. Anybody that wants to do virtual can sign up for that.
Point of clarification, if I could.
Yes.
You said earlier, we're not offering online and remote, remote.
Right. So we did that the first year with COVID, where families could opt. We had teachers that were designated as remote learning teachers, and kids could stay home and do remote learning. We're not offering that as a service this year. They can either do our virtual school, which was still open at that time previous, or they can come to school. So.
And that's what that last bullet is.
Yeah.
Students in middle and high school.
Right.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
because when we did remote, we offered it for all grades, and so the littles could stay home as well. We're not offering that service this year. Okay. Yeah. For staff, social, emotional, and mental health, that section has not changed. We do have services available for our families and our students. We do partner with Genesis and Compass for social emotional support.
And is that another one that you do anyway?
Yes.
That you put it?
Yes. And we've been doing, you've probably had, I'm just trying to think, at least once a year, the reports when we partner with Compass, that's been going on for several years. We just added Genesis this year, but it's a similar kind of agreement. So Compass is doing, Josh, you can jump in here, but Compass is doing elementary and one of our middle schools, and Genesis is getting the secondary schools. So.
They're doing, I think, we're encompasses in 12 buildings. I think it is.
Free breakfast and nursing services available in all buildings. That can be a nurse or a CNA. So that is the revised plan that Michelle and I have put together. We do have the one page. I noticed a couple of things that would need to be changed if you agree with this, that will change, but we do still have the one page document if you want to keep it for parents. And we do still have the classroom status, which is the green is no positives, yellow is a positive in your class. It means nothing else. And then red is if we have to do more, either a mask or close it because of staffing or something like that. So I will tell you, I believe, we've got a couple new ones, but I believe we've got 11 buildings that are yellow right now. So I went ahead and started it since we were still on the old plan, so.
And do you know, we just started school, but any reports on the severity of her symptoms specifically? I was just curious how much that changed.
We ended up with the majority of those today. So I have with Michelle gone, and they just literally are emailing me and saying the nurses are and saying we've got a positive. So that's all the further I've gotten.
And those tests are optional for them to take, right?
Correct.
They just want to go home.
Pardon?
If they have a fever or a symptom
Oh,
and
they don't want
want
them to go home,
test,
correct.
they-
Mhm.
Any other?
Yeah, just on the red for your color chart there, that's essentially going to this CDC guidance.
Correct. And we would call Trudy and say, we have an outbreak in a classroom, and inform them of what we've got going on in that classroom.
Any other questions?
Do you, sorry, go ahead.
I would just go ahead. I asked and then I'll follow.
Do you feel like that this plan covers all the bases that we need to have a COVID plan?
It answers all of the questions, which is what we're required to do. I would say that there are probably people that feel we could do more, and probably staff that feel we could do more. This this does meet the requirement for the ESSERS in the federal government.
Lake County Health, are you comfortable with this?
Yes, I think so. When we discussed the plan, we talked about how the guidelines are in a flux. And so that's why it's the language of, do the needful at the time of an outbreak, when an outbreak is identified, is something that I am appreciative of. So that is something that, especially with the flu season coming on, we do not really know how things will evolve. And if things get really bad, then we might have to go back to what was being done before. But otherwise, a lot of the restrictions, et cetera, that had been in place for a while have been done away with.
Yeah, go ahead.
On the comments you made about the testing that's made available to students, staff, and household members. Because I didn't realize household members, but it makes sense from the standpoint of exposure. But the influenza part, I think, is not a small matter, and that's, like I've said before, it's kind of nice to address that issue at the same time.
Michelle makes it so handy. I don't think she gets enough, kudos for what she does and what her nurses do. But I will use myself as an example. When we became sick, we literally drove up out here in the parking lot and texted and said, we're here. My husband and I both, and she came out and she had, her mask and her face shield and everything on, and she tested us both. We just rolled down the window and then we rolled up the window and went home until she called. And it was super simple. And, had I been negative, she would have said, you can come back to school. Instead, she said, you gotta stay home for a while. But it makes it just very, very easy for our families, for our staff. And we know within 15 minutes.
Influenza is not something we want to just see go rampant either, so.
Right, and she can test for both. Mina?
One of the entities that we, have been pretty constant communication with during the COVID outbreak was St. Catherine Hospital. This emergency bedroom, that whole emergency room kind of occupancy was one of the things that, was concerning. Is that something that we're continuing to do with them? Have some input from hospital or not really?
In general, even though the transmission in the community is high, the severity of symptoms seems to be lower than what it was before. And so hospitalizations haven't gone up as the positivity rates, like at the same pace. They've gone up slightly, but not much. But yes, we are in communication with the hospital, and if things change, we will remove communications the way we were doing before. So on our end, we will make sure we do that. Update them.
So right now, we were meeting once a week, and I think that's what you were referring to. We're meeting once a week with Shruti and her staff, and we were getting all of the information from the community in the hospital. We are not doing that right now. It's on an as-needed basis.
Thank you.
I have a question about the CDC guidance. Is that local or regional, or is that nationwide?
The CDC guidance is nationwide, and then KDHE adapts and adopts the guidance and gives us guidelines. And then we try to follow mostly what they say, but it is up to us to decide locally what we want to do.
That's my question. Thank you.
Anybody else have questions or
Ready to move if you
comments?
need that.
I have some comments I'd like to make, or I can save it for discussion. Did you have anything else? I feel like we cut you off.
No, I'm good.
I had a couple things that I wanted to reach out to the rest of the board to have maybe some changes on this just a little bit. Linda and I have met. She's answered all my questions several times, even when I've asked them several. And I think that was a great question about the CDC guidelines. And I think it's important for us to look at what our need is at the local level. I'm thankful that the severity of this illness is more like the flu. So
what I would like to see is that we align our policies with what we do with the flu. We have to have this in place to get our ESSERS funding, which is unfortunate. The money's tied to healthcare at this point, but that's what we need to do. What's best for our kids. The CDC guidelines have changed quite a bit. They're now following the same procedures for the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. So that's something that we don't specifically have in here. So that just, I want to keep that in mind, that those guidelines change. But when it comes down to it, it's our local health department and us as a school board to do what's best for our kids. So I'd really like to see on there that we need to have the current CDC guidelines will be followed or looked at, but I think with board approval needs to be on there somewhere. So that if there's any big changes of shutting down classrooms or changing how our kids are seated in class, I think we need to take responsibility for that, because when it comes down to it, we're responsible for our kids and their education. I don't know if that's something the rest of the board feels like wants to be on there. When I'm done, you guys can kind of follow up and let me know. If not, I'm only one person. So I also don't believe that there should be any time that we require students or staff to wear a mask. I think if they're sick, they need to be at home, and if healthy kids should be in school. Masks shouldn't be discouraged if someone wants to wear one. That's completely their option. There is just, the fact is, there is enough studies out there that show negatives of forcing children to wear masks, especially if their masks aren't clean. And we've pounded and pounded on following the science, and that science is out there, that and that the regular cloth masks we're wearing aren't necessarily protecting that, keeping that virus from spreading. And I just feel like that fact has been getting pushed to the side quite a bit. Under the wearing a mask, I would like it to say that masks will be optional in Garden City Public Schools, and when masks are worn, it should follow the school dress code. That's all that I would like to see in there. Because that's a personal choice and it should stay that way. If kids aren't healthy, they need to stay home till they're better, but I want to have healthy kids in school with the ability to get the best education they can. I think that's the only one I had so I kind of had 3 changes on there.
May I comment on that?
Yeah.
Okay, so Michelle and I did talk about that after you and I visited. She felt very strongly that the CDC guidelines needed to be followed on day 5 through 10, and wear a mask if they wanted to come back early. Of course, you can vote to change that, but she did tell me that she wanted the plan presented with this because she felt that strongly that it needed to be day 5 through 10 unless they came in and tested negative. And some people do test negative on day 6, but she felt very strongly that we needed to encourage masks for day 6 through 10 if they came in positive.
And I have one other, but I kind of threw a lot at you guys. Is there any of those that you would like to add on there or just keep it the same?
I agree with on the it's the CDC guidelines that with the board approval. And it's just because we may have something different that's being recommended. I think we need to always be aware of it and approve it if.
But I would agree with that. I think that's why I asked the question about the CDC being nationwide or local. And I agree that we should take responsibility for our students locally and do what's best for our students locally, not necessarily just take a nationwide approach. So I do agree with you on that as well, Jennifer.
And that will come into the motion if somebody makes a motion if they would like that added. I believe we can do it that way.
In the current guidelines, it has the wear a mask after 5 days or test negative, that is in those guidelines.
It actually has brand new guidance, and it looked just pretty, but it actually has them do 2 tests 24 hours apart,
48 hours.
48 hours apart, and they have to have 2 negatives to wear a mask, and we took it back to just 1. Because Michelle said she was fine with just 1 test instead of 2. But the current CDC guidance is 2 negative tests in order to come back without a mask.
Jennifer, what was your other point?
Glenda had also talked about these 2 papers. This is what we're required to have on our website for our funding. I would entertain the idea of voting on these separately. Again, the flu is just as much of a concern as COVID right now. I know that we have maps from the state that say our rates are high, and transmission, and it's all in red and it's scary. But as it's been pointed out, the symptoms are not as severe or as unknown. People are vaccinated, people that have had it, their immunity is stronger against that. And I really think unless we're gonna put on our website our flu numbers and the stomach flu, I know it's not respiratory, but for some kids who get severely dehydrated, and I'm gonna make people talk because I'm bringing this stuff up, but I really want to do what's best for kids. And I think we need to go to putting this on our website and go away from these. Especially the classroom status one, I just don't feel like it's necessary anymore. We communicate as administration and parents when there is an illness in our classrooms, and we want to keep our classrooms open as long as there's staff to teach those kids, even if it's not very many. So I don't want to focus on shutting down classrooms and having this. I don't think it needs to be on there. I think it's all covered in this plan. So I would really like to entertain a motion separately for these. Perhaps starting with this one.
I feel like we're heading into really dangerous kind of territory when we start to pick and choose what national entities or national institutions or national departments that we're going to listen to or not listen to. Because we're not professionals. So we hope that the people that exist in these, departments or institutes, or I don't know what you call the CDC, but they're professionals. We're not professionals. And so, if we start saying we're not gonna follow what the CDC says, then do we say we're not gonna follow what the Department of Education tells us? Or, any other agency that exists to protect the American people? Sorry, I can't breathe very good. I know these things are a pain. It's not conducive to a lot of things. I understand that wholeheartedly. It's a small thing. It's a small inconvenience to make sure our teachers stay healthy. I think, to put COVID with the flu is not really, COVID was a pandemic and it had some really detrimental effects to the world population. So I don't know what was done during the Black Plague or other things that were very detrimental to the world health. But that, I don't think, I think putting that and kind of, which is exactly what I did. I mean, I wanted to be in, what do you call it? Like, I didn't want to feel like I had COVID. To me, I just had a flu, and luckily all my symptoms were very mild. But, I think we really need to be careful and not overstep our bounds. That is what we're doing. We're going to look at the CDC and we're going to decide as a board what works best in collaboration with our health department. And I think that's what this says. And I think that is solid. In terms of the green, yellow, red, if I'm a parent and I just want to briefly see, because if I have a sick parent, if I have somebody with a chronic illness or other illness, and I can see that a classroom or classrooms of my students, I'm talking about the classrooms that my kids are part of, then I can see, do I want my kids to be able to go to the high school when they have 3 yellow classrooms and a red classroom? I don't know. That's a decision that I want to make as a parent, but this easy information helps me to make that. I think that the staff has done an amazing job trying to collaborate or be sensitive to the board's sensitivities to certain issues. But I think that we're really starting to overstep bounds when we say that we are professionals or we are experts in health. Like, I am not an expert. I want to know that the experts are guiding me to the best of their ability. Are they always going to be right? No, it's like the weatherman. I mean, even though they're trained and they have all the education and they have all the tools, they're not going to get it right every single time. But it's better to err on the side of safety. So my feeling is that when we do this, or if this is passed by the board, we are opening Pandora's box, because what other entities are we not going to listen to or take that professional expertise with other decisions that we make, health related or not?
Jackie, did you have something? Yeah, I don't know that it's saying that we're not gonna follow it. I think it's more saying that we need to follow more locally, do what's right for our area. I don't take that it's not following guidelines. I think it's choosing to do what's right for our area at the time.
And I agree that to a certain extent, but when you start saying we will not require a mask ever, if that's a CDC guideline, then that's something that we should consider as a board. And I'm not saying do it, but I'm saying consider it. So if we put language in there that says we're not going to do certain things, I think that that's a mistake.
Well,
I misunderstood because I didn't see anybody say that we're never gonna wear masks.
Well, no, I just requested that it's never be required. I asked that it say that masks are optional for
Yeah.
school districts, because there's no other place in our community that's requiring, I mean, maybe they're employees, but the health department's not going in and saying you all have to wear masks in the grocery store or the shopkeeper's store down the street. And CDC's own, you go into their website and their own numbers show that it doesn't make a significant difference on the spread.
But it's not being required right now. Nobody is requiring it right now, but this is a plan to kind of not necessarily just say what's happening right now. It's the plan, should we get something from the health department that says, man, like things are really bad, we need to take some precautions. If we start losing teachers, that was the primary reason that we weren't able to have classes, right? Because we didn't have enough teachers to teach those. So if by telling a classroom full of yellows, hey, if we wear some masks, we might mitigate having to send you all home because your teacher's not available, I think it's worth it. And teachers do that with, I mean, they know what their students can handle, they're gonna give their students breaks. Nobody really wants to be wearing the mask. I don't want to be wearing the mask, but this is what I was told to do, to come and be in public, and I think it's important that I'm here. It's not that big of a deal for the next 2 hours, and I will do that. Not a big deal.
We're told to follow the science constantly, but then when the science changes and it's not in favor of these restrictions, we get told we should do it anyway. And that's my frustration. And I know that we say kids are behind academically because they had to stay home, but there's also the mask impedes students and teachers in their academic.
I do not disagree with that, but it's not a long-term solution in most cases.
It's being turned into a long-term solution. We've been encouraged to wear masks for 3 years now, despite the changes. And I'm not gonna, whatever you guys decide, I'm not gonna keep pushing it, but that's been my stance from the beginning. And despite what some community members say, that I get my information off Facebook, which I've said before, and the news media, I talk to numerous medical professionals, and it's not that I don't trust the health department at all. I mean, but we're only getting our information from one source at this point, and that's the CDC, and they're not willing to look at anything else. And there's abundance of information out there. So, like I said, I want to speak my piece now, so I don't have to bring it up again. I'm going to support whatever the board decides. I'm not a medical professional. I agree. I'm also don't have a degree in administration, but we listen to all our administrators and they bring us information, and sometimes we do exactly what they say, and sometimes we seek out other information from different sources and we tweak it a little bit. And that's where I'm coming from with that. I know we can't do anything to make everybody happy. I'm really here to do what's best for our students and our staff.
And kind of add
Yeah.
on something, I think by far the flu should be included more in this, and I said that on the first time this was presented. But if you test positive and you retest and it's still positive, even if you go to school with a mask, that kid is gonna be touching that and touching things. It's gonna spread more than it is just to stay home if you're sick. I mean, that mask is not gonna help. The germs are gonna be on it and it's not gonna help keep it from, because a little kid, even a high school kid, is not gonna leave that alone all day. An adult doesn't.
But this isn't a flu plan, this is the COVID plan, and this is what is required for the ESSERS money. If you wanna come up with a flu plan, because we think that the flu is more dangerous than COVID, we certainly could do it, but this is the COVID plan.
Why can't it be included in one?
Because this is what it is. It's a COVID plan. It's gotta say COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way
But
around it.
But
But
it
can
doesn't
it
say
say
it can't
that-
say flu.
Can it say we will follow the same district policies as we do for other communicable diseases or the flu?
It can, but at this point, what's the point in that? Like, what are we trying to do by adding that to this? And if you see value in that, then sure, but I mean, we don't get money from the federal government for flu. They didn't give us money because of a flu outbreak. They gave us money because a lot of things came up due to COVID. A lot of negative things happened due to COVID. So they gave us a ton of money so we could help alleviate some of those things by all the detriment that was caused, getting counselors and nurses and different things in place. And I think we just need to keep the focus on that. This is a COVID plan to give us our ESSERS money. I'm not saying to do things that you don't believe in. I'm not asking you to pass something you don't think is right for our students. That money, the positions, the resources that I provided is very much for our students.
And it's important.
And
I
it's
agree.
extremely important,
But now it's tied to wearing a mask or not. I mean, that's.
not necessarily. And my argument is that we have to be really careful. You may not agree with the CDC, and I agree with you. You can find science on both sides of the argument, absolutely. And I don't know which one is right. I'm saying the institution, our governmental institution that is to guide us through health is telling us this. Now, I get the distrust of government wholeheartedly, but if we start doing that, then all the systems are gonna break down. I mean, because where do we stop? If we don't agree with what the Department of Education tells us, you know, it just can go on, and that's my fear is that, and I hear that you're saying we're not necessarily gonna follow CDC, but the CDC should be our guidance. Something has to be our guidance, and then we can make local things that make sense locally, but it's only saying CDC guidance. So I don't wanna change the language. I feel like they worked really hard.
They did work hard on it.
And they've compromised in a lot of things to make more people comfortable. And I 100% agree with you, Jennifer. Like, we're just never gonna make everybody happy. Nobody's gonna be 100% content with whatever we come up with. But I do believe this is solid, but we can go on and on. So
Oh, I know.
if you have a
I agree.
motion, like,
Yep,
absolutely.
if you're ready to make a motion, I'm,
So I have,
go ahead.
so this is fluid. This is gonna change.
Mhm.
I promise you, in the next month, we're gonna be sitting here talking about this again, no matter what we pass today. You know, so it's never going away. We're never gonna outrun it. To get the ESSERS money, the COVID plan has to say COVID. It's not a flu plan, it's a COVID plan. So we gotta use that language in there. Whether we support masks, not I agree with her that, you know, where do we draw that line in the sand of what do we do? I mean, we had Tammy was here earlier. Obviously, she supports the guidelines as given, you know, so whether I agree with it or I don't, we hire these professionals to give us the guidance. We're basing our opinion off to me, our local professionals are saying, they're recommending that So that holds more weight to me than the CDC does. But when they look me in the eye and the health department says, hey, I think maybe this is a route we should take, then that holds more weight with me than, as you say, the federal guidelines, the CDC. But I think no matter what happens today, this conversation's not over. And I think going forward with it as is right now, I'm okay with, but we'll decide that.
Randy, I would agree with you on that, we gotta have our COVID plan. I would agree with the last thing you said, that, you know, you believe in the local government more than the CDC. And I think that's exactly what Jennifer's asking for with the one amendment is, hey, we want to follow the CDC guidance with board, or, you know, with board approval. Basically to where if the CDC is recommending something nationwide that isn't a factor in Garden City, the board can say, hey, we're going to use common sense, or we're going to use our local health department to make this decision for our district, opposed to using a national organization. So she's not saying, my understanding from what Jennifer's saying is, we're not running away from the CDC. We're not going to say we're not going to use their recommendations. We're just saying we're going to use their recommendations, but we're going to apply local health department and the local school board, use common sense on that, what's right for our community. Did I misspeak in that, or is that what I hear you saying? So,
Point of clarification then.
Yes.
Do we jeopardize this, the purpose of this document and the funding if we say CDC guidance subject to board approval?
I don't believe so. We have to have a plan.
Right.
My understanding is we just need to answer these questions.
So did you have something you wanted to add on that?
I just wanted to clarify two points. One was about the CDC guidance. The CDC puts out guidance that is reviewed and adopted and adapted by KDHE. And that's where we get most of our guidance from. We try to follow KDHE guidance more closely. And again, that is not binding. We try to adopt as well as adapt the guidance that KDHE puts out to what the current situation is in our county. So what the health department is doing is much more aligned with KDHE rather than what CDC is recommending.
So can we add in here that we follow our local health department and board approval rather than just the CDC?
Where the blue hot link is, we say follow current CDC and health department guidance. So we're going to listen to the health department. If you'd rather us say KDHE and the health department there, I don't think it makes much difference, because she's going to work with her team and interpret it and tell us what is best for our area. And they've been very, very flexible with us, just like the one test instead of two kind of thing, so.
Is that what we could add, Jennifer, is current CDC guidance and local health department?
It says
Or
that.
it says it in the link, but there's two other places where it says current CDC guidance will be followed. So it's under the modifying physical distancing and also under the contact tracing. It says school nurses may test and identify cases. They will follow current CDC guidance for isolation. So if we put CDC guidance or CDC.
Or the KDHE guidance.
Or.
Yeah, and local health department. With local health department.
And local health department, like that.
So your thought is under contact tracing, was that what you're referring to, or?
In the two places where it says
Modifying
CDC guidance.
facilities.
Here.
I mean, I'm personally comfortable with the link reference. It puts, I mean, it shows the way to do it in Kansas is that, as she explained, local health department gets the guidance from KDHE and sort of works with it for what works in our area, depending on the circumstances. I also want to point out that we've got to have a plan in place that can be implemented and not wait for the next board meeting.
Yep.
And I take some comfort that you will remain in your current position for a while. And so we can always have on the agenda the additional discussions that were referenced. And so we don't relinquish any control here.
I just don't want to constantly I don't want people to think I'm trying to constantly bring it up and not support what the board decides. So
that's why I wanted to discuss it now, so that I know it's a liquid document and it's gonna change based on guidelines, but
No,
I don't think we need
I
to
have a
discuss it every
sense that
meeting.
everybody here supports what the board decides.
Right.
Because we have a pretty good board. So that's good, but we also, I think, because of that working relationship, we can bring things up again as the need arises. Almost like some of the testimony we heard earlier. And so I guess what I would like to do at this point, first of all, beyond commending all of the work, because I think this is a great 2-page document, by the way.
Yes.
Based on all of the work. And I have real concern for the subject to board approval, because I know we can always come back to it. And we don't want to delay any response because of that little addition. So I would move that we adopt this current document as proposed with the modification that wherever it says follow current CDC guidance on its own, by itself, that we feel free to add and local health department guidance. And then that gives us that level, hopefully, of comfort that is really, in a practical sense, the way it works. But I just don't want to miss out on the ESSER funds. I don't want those questioned. And I know that we are always here to address it again. And I fully understand the thought process.
I am very comfortable with that amendment if the rest of you are too.
So you're seconding?
I would second that.
More discussion.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I would like to change it to where masks are optional in Garden City High School or Garden City Public Schools. And then I would like to add the board approval. That basically CDC guidance would be followed, local health department guidance with board approval.
So is that a substitute motion?
Well, I guess the process would be if you choose not to amend it, we can vote against that and there'd be another motion if it didn't pass. Is that correct?
You'd have to, if it didn't pass, you'd have to take another night to help.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of this, as last two.
So let's take a bite of the apple.
Okay. A motion's been made to approve this as is with the addition of local health department guidance where it states CDC guidance. I think I said it backwards, but
Oh, that's good.
that's what you said. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed?
So it fails. There's not 4 votes.
So I'd like to make a motion that we, under masking, we make mask optional in Garden City Public Schools. And we remove bullet point 2, 3 and 4, positive student staff 5-day, 10-day. And then I would like to put my other comments in where we put, we follow current CDC guidance, local health department with board approval.
Is there a second? A second. Any discussion? Okay, I guess we'll vote on that and then see what happens.
Okay.
All in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? Okay, guess we need to keep talking about it. Is there a compromise in the middle that we can try to come to terms with? Because we do need to decide this tonight.
I fully respect what John's motion is intended to do regarding subject to board approval. But that one is beyond where I could go. Because I feel like the plan has got to be there to be implemented when it's needed and not wait for the next board meeting.
Can we put it, if it changes from what this is, then it needs to be board approval? I mean, because we can have a board meeting in a day's notice.
It's not supposed to change from what this is without the board adopting a new plan.
Right. But then just adding that in there, that's just adding words in. I mean, it's adding clarification in.
I just feel like it should be added in there because if we close down classrooms or do something, I mean, we're gonna get the brunt of the public. So I feel like the board should approve whatever we change because we're gonna have to answer the questions. So that's why I feel like it should be in there. And based on experience, I agree with you. Yeah. So, and I appreciate your comments that, hey, we wanna act fast. You know what I mean? We don't wanna have something with the CDC or the local health department changes and we can't adapt until the next board meeting. So I do appreciate your comment there, but I do agree with Jackie. If we need an emergency, if we have an outbreak that bad, we can have an emergency board meeting to take care of that.
And we should at that time.
Yeah.
I mean, and it could even be added in the title, right under it. Any changes must be done by, board approval.
The part I'm concerned about is if you boil the plan down with that language in there, that the plan is take it to the board. We really need a different plan than that.
I agree with what Mark's saying, because if that becomes a precedent, then everything has to go always for any plan that we have in place currently. In any area, we'll always fall back to needing board approval. And I think, again, that sets a dangerous precedent where we put a plan in place that we agree, is in the best interest of our staff and students, and then we leave it to our staff and the people we trust in those places of authority to, when a decision needs to be made, they're able to make it based on the plan that we've set. If we have to then step in every single time there's a question, I think that's not the role of the board. The role of the board is to give an overall plan, and then when it's set into motion, we trust our qualified staff to make those good decisions for their students, for our students.
I don't think we're asking to take that decision-making power away, because no matter what's done, it has to be done within this plan anyway.
Exactly.
So I don't know why adding board approval in there for clarification. I guess I don't agree with it not being important. I think it's important that parents know and that others know that this is the plan. This is what the district is going to execute. If it needs to change, it'll be upon her board approval and not upon just a superintendent or a principal or whatever to do.
But that's a given with any plan that we approve. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Then why is it an issue to put it in?
because it sets a bad precedence where anytime a decision or something, like, it always needs to fall back on board approval. Like, if we put that in every document, then we start to, what was the plan we worked on not that long ago? Was it the disciplinary plan? Is that the one that came up?
I think you're right.
And, they put a plan in place. Well, if they get situations that arise, are we gonna have a board meeting? Is the board gonna have to step in to do something in conjunction with the plan? Like, that's not our role.
I
Like,
think the difference in that is, and I'm sorry I cut you off, is with the CDC guidelines included in there, those can be constantly changing. So say from my perspective, the changes, if CDC suddenly says everyone needs to wear masks again, mandatory, is that just automatically gonna happen, or is that gonna come back to the board before that happens?
but it says the district will follow current CDC and health department guidance. So our administration would work with the local health department and make a determination, because what if it's just in a classroom or something like that, right? Something small, do they have to make a decision for that classroom? Are we gonna need to be involved in that decision making? I get if it's something huge where the entire school district, well, yeah, I'm pretty sure, like Randy said earlier, it's gonna come back to the board because we're gonna have to make some bigger decisions.
Well, I just want to ensure that we have that ability to do that.
I think that's exactly what we're asking for. I mean, you laid out our point better than we probably did right there. I mean, the plan's the plan, and if something major changes, we want it to come back to the board.
But that's not what you're verbalizing, in what you said. Reiterate what you want to add.
So maybe there's another way to do that to get to that goal.
Yeah, let's see, reiterate it, sorry.
Basically just saying that we're gonna follow the CDC guidance, local health department guidance with board approval.
Maybe it needs to say with any changes.
Any district-wide changes? In our previous plan, we had something about that. I don't know if it was mask or if it was closing down schools, but that those specific things would come back to the board before it changed. Do you remember? I caught you off guard, so we hadn't talked about that. No, that's okay. So I'm going to draw attention to the very first paragraph that says in the day-to-day operation, if something happens, that gives administration the right and obligation to take action on whatever needs to happen. So if I'm over at VO, for example, and we have 3 teachers go down and 3 of their paras, and Tracy is calling me saying, we can't do this in this particular classroom, then we can say those kids are going to do remote until the teacher comes back. That paragraph up there gives us that ability to do that. And I feel pretty strongly that exactly what Dana is saying is probably accurate. I think what she's saying, what you guys are saying, there is a middle ground here. But I think you cannot tie the hands of the administrators from doing their jobs. And sometimes that means we have to make a decision on a moment's notice. We have to be able to tell the parents, hey, we have a teacher gone and all of her paras, and we need to have this classroom be remote for 5 days. And we have to be able to make that decision. I think if there's major CDC guidance that comes out and it's significantly different, trust me, we're gonna bring it back to you. I mean, so I don't mind that part, and Shruti and I've kind of been up here kind of saying, yeah, we can certainly add current and even add local KDHE guidance. That's the Kansas department. So do we need to add KDHE? So we talk about how they interpret it, and then they send it to her and she says, this is what's best for our area. Because like I said before, Shruti and her team have been very, very flexible with us. But we have to have some ability to make the day-to-day decisions. Because you're right, we can call a board meeting on a moment's notice. But by the time we get you guys together at the end of the day or call an emergency board meeting for 6 o'clock that night, we've left an entire building hanging, not knowing what they're gonna do. And I can't speak for the others, but that was not my intention to take away the
No, we're
day-to-day.
just talking about CDC and local guidance with the board approval. The top part, absolutely, you guys gotta manage the classroom.
Yeah.
That was never in question.
And that's what I heard, John. Maybe I misunderstood that, because that's what I heard. I
That's
felt
how I
like
took it as well.
you were saying every action needs board approval, essentially. That's how I heard it.
No.
So this is good.
Not at all. My motion was basically just saying if there is a major change to the CDC and major change to what the local health department wants us to do, then we need board approval of that as well. That's all I'm saying.
But
The
basically,
day-to-day of running the classrooms is Dr. Dominguez and Linda's and all the principals' jobs.
so basically like a major policy
CDC
change.
sends something like a big change in what their guidance is. I feel like that should come to the board.
And I'll just interject right now that if you're down teachers, that's faculty, that is a totally different situation.
Yes.
And sometimes it is, can you go cover, high school, go down to the elementary, middle school type situation and those things. If we get to that point, that's a whole different situation. We would know as a community, I mean, if there's an immediate outbreak and so forth, that the immediacy of it is somewhat troubling and scary. But if it's a progression and I'll just say Thanksgiving and we're just down teachers and we're doing it 1 week, 2 weeks in, that's a whole different scenario, but we would have that knowledge. We would be able to say, and done it before, like, and we're taking 2 days off just to give everybody some isolation time, and we did. And that wasn't here, but, and that is what we did, and that was with board approval, but we just didn't have any more teachers. I mean, there just literally was no faculty left to cover, and I'm saying covering, how much instruction was actually occurring, how much learning was occurring, how much literacy was occurring. So that's the only time we would, I hate to say even consider that, but truly that's the only time we would consider that, you know, if you don't have teachers healthy enough to be in the classroom, that's the truth, so.
And I will just reiterate, this information. We never did go remote last year or close a classroom unless it was because we couldn't staff it. So we never did it because there were like 5 kids positive or something. We just kept plugging away until, and usually the principal, it was an absolute last resort because we never did it without talking to the principal. What can you handle? Do you have staff you can move in there? How can we make this work? And they never wanted to close any classrooms. So their heart is right in there. Let's give it a go. But they also realize when they've pushed their people to the limit and we've got to take a break and say, well, wait a minute. So that is absolutely where we were a few times last year.
And I hesitate too with the mask optional because again, I was thinking about something that Glenda said, I think when I listened to the meeting last time, is if we have an instructor who has a chronic illness or is more prone to something and that teacher may need that accommodation made, I don't want to not provide that teacher that accommodation. I mean,
Well, and I want to support those teachers, but again, if they're, and I want to keep teachers in the classroom, I don't want to discourage anyone from working, but if their immune system is that severe, kids are germy and flu and RSV. I mean, RSV was even more prevalent last year for our kids. Is that the best work environment for them long-term anyway? I mean, I don't want to discourage anyone to go home, but I never want to have kids in masks long-term because the science simply is not there that supports it. And I like almost everything about this plan. I'm going to struggle with voting for anything that requires anyone to wear a mask because I think that should be a personal choice. That would be like telling everyone they need to take hundreds of milligrams of vitamin D to boost their immunity, whether they want to or not, because that also lowers the risk of spreading it and the severity of it. It's too personal and the science does not support it enough. And I want to support those teachers, but I don't think I can support a plan that says that masks will be required for them to be able to go to school. I don't think that's okay.
but that's kind of apples to oranges because having to take something like the immune, like the vaccination, I get that, that's a choice. It's something that has effects to your body. It has, there's I have the word in my mind. It's invasive, right? Because you have to ingest or you have to have some sort of side effect, most likely. But this isn't necessarily invasive unless it's long-term, which when you say long-term, I don't imagine kids sitting 8 hours in a mask. No teacher is going to have,
But that's what happened.
a teacher. No teacher's going to have a student in a mask. If that happens, then that needs to be reported and then that teacher needs some guidance, clearly. Because we do have a lot of new teachers, but I think the majority of it, I didn't hear a lot of cases of parents telling me at least, like, my kid is in a really detrimental situation having to wear the mask. I just hesitate to take that out because
And it's what everyone wants to do on this table. I have to speak my mind on that.
Sure.
And I appreciate hearing your thoughts and
me too, Jennifer.
Well,
I've always
that,
valued
so-
that and supported that during the COVID crisis. You definitely represent people in the community, so I'm not.
And it's been a longer discussion than I'm sure Glenda had liked, but I really think it's been a good
Makes us
discussion.
stand up.
Can I
So
interject something else?
yes,
So the third bullet in there is if diagnosis positive, then they can return on day 5 and wear a mask through day 10. So the current isolation for COVID is 10 days. They can stay home for all 10 days and not wear a mask. The current, And I'm trying to remember what Michelle told me, but I believe the current isolation for the flu is 5 days, and our nurses follow that guidance also. That is the current guidance that they get from the state and KDHE and CDC, and they have a guidance on if they have this, you tell them this many days. If they have this, you tell them this many days. So the current guidance for the flu, for example, is 5 days. We tell the kids, if you've got the flu, you stay home for 5 days. If you have COVID, you stay home for 10. But if you really feel good and you want to come back, you don't have any symptoms, then you can wear a mask or you can test. So it's optional, and we aren't telling parents they're good, bad, or indifferent. If they choose to keep their kid home rather than put a mask on them, that's their prerogative, absolutely.
And is there anything in this plan that is gonna require a whole classroom to healthy kids to wear masks?
That would possibly, at the most outside, and again, it didn't happen last year, but except at the beginning when we had the other plan. They could say, I'm gonna say the health department or the governor or somebody could give us a mandate and say, there's a mandate out there that you have to wear a mask, and then we have to follow that mandate. But as it stands right now, we're not going to say that unless we get that mandate that comes from somebody.
That's more my concern is.
And if that's the case, then we are gonna call a board meeting.
That's right, okay. Well,
Because
thank
that's
you
a-
for that clarification, because
yeah.
I don't feel like,
Yeah,
or
I
I
think,
didn't feel like that was stated in there.
yeah, I think that would fall under what John's talking about and Jackie's talking about, where that's a major thing coming down and we're gonna tell you that this is what's happening. So then if you wanna have a board meeting to override that mandate, then you could.
I'm sorry if I cut you off.
You didn't.
Thank you.
No, I feel you, I feel you.
Again, I feel like because of the leadership we have on the board, we are going to be able to, and setting of the agenda is the point of saying that, that we can deal with that as needed. And that we'll be approach for dealing with that. I understand John's amendment now, a little better than brevity, sometimes it's too brief.
Yeah,
And
sometimes it's clear to me and I don't explain it well, so I apologize for that.
You're good.
no, you're good. But I really want this to be accepted as far as the job. The two key jobs here is keep people healthy and then allow the staff to be able to respond to carry that mission out and keep us funded. And at least in this conversation, maybe overly simplified, but I want to be sure that what we put forward does the job.
Well, and I really feel like sorry to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
I really feel like as a board, we agree, and if we talked about this, it's come up in conversation, like, we believe that kids should be in school. Like, it is gonna take a lot to get us to have a repeat of what we did last time. I think we all understand that there are detriments attached with these big decisions that, and I agree, there are detriments to the mask, so I'm not saying that there are not. But I truly believe at the end of the day, we all agree, like, that we want kids in school and we want their best interests, and we're all trying to do that. So sometimes people think we're against, they kind of think we're against each other. The bottom line is we all really agree on what's important, which is keeping our kids in school. But I do feel like if anything extreme came up, like, we would work well together to come up with that good plan for our students. And, I mistake. So if we want to add language that says if anything drastic, if there are drastic measures, then, we need to have board that, I feel like it's implied, but if you don't, let's put it in the language. And I am comfortable with that. I did misunderstand that.
I would like to ask a favor. When you pass your, or make your next motion, to be very clear for me, so I know how to go forward, because Jennifer has mentioned doing away with the one-page document and doing away with the communication that we do for parents with the color. So when you make your motion, if you will tell us whether it includes all COVID communication or just the one page, because if you don't pass this, then this will come down tomorrow. Okay, I just ask that you be clear so I know what to do.
Can you explain that one more time? So.
Yeah.
This plan will override.
This plan, so Jennifer brought up passing just this and leaving these off.
Okay.
So I need you to be clear on what you want me to do with this communication tool that we use for parents and the one-page document that we've used to shorten this up.
And this
So,
is the part that's required.
yes. Yes, this is required. The other is just our way of communicating to parents whether or not there's a positive in their child's classroom. So, and we are currently doing this, so you can go in right now and see which buildings have a positive in them and which classrooms. But like I said, it can come down tomorrow if you say that you don't want that.
And I would say that it's pretty ingrained, if you've noticed, in our culture, both last year and this year, starting off, the green, yellow, and red. And so it might be helpful to keep it.
I disagree. I think it's more just to focus on absentee numbers and based on illness in general. Constantly having that, but again, some people like more information than not. I feel like this covers what we need and that's available for parents to see what our processes are too, but I will.
Well, just to get us.
Yep, but
Get us rolling, can we focus on what we can maybe do with just with the plan?
is putting something in their district changes,
Following CDC.
something about just major changes, but district changes. I had it now.
District response to unforeseen circumstances. I don't know if that's right, because this is a plan to deal with.
Right, so district practices change as opposed to a current building or classroom.
Right.
So if it's a overarching policy, then you want it brought back to the board. I think I can wordsmith that in there.
You're better at wordsmithing
I'll
than I
work real
am,
hard at
so.
that, so.
But as long as it follows, I don't know, John?
Yeah, I just, I want to make decisions locally. I mean, I think that's the one thing that I think was a mistake in COVID the first time around, and no one knew because we were dealing with a different beast. But I think now we've had enough data, we have enough treatments, we have enough, vaccines are available. I think that we should make decisions locally in Garden City for Garden City Public School opposed to nationally. So that's the only thing I want in there is that, we're gonna pay attention to the CDC and we're gonna take guidance from them. We're gonna take guidance from our local health department. And the board wants to be able to basically be part of that if we're gonna do any major change to our district, like, if we have to shut down or if we have to go to, whatever's proposed, that's a major change from this plan that the board would, we're obviously gonna catch the heat for it. So I think that the board needs to take ownership of it, protect our teachers, protect our students, to the best of our ability locally. And then we're gonna have to answer to the public on what we do.
You can turn that into one sentence, right?
I can. I
We
got it.
need that in our motion somehow though, right? Somebody else gets to make the motion, so
Okay, because it just has to be super careful in that.
figure out how to
It
make that work.
doesn't, like, if you have to shut down a classroom, you don't have to turn to the board for that.
Right.
It's the big,
It's a district, yeah. I've got some chicken scratch here, so I will send you a draft and, yeah.
I'd recommend that we just leave this. It's not hurting anything. And that information is out there if somebody wants it. They're already doing it. It's
Right.
already there.
But
If a parent is interested, it's there. It's not hurting anything. I get what you're saying. I totally get it, but also if it's there, it's information.
what, on the red, otherwise, it's information only except for the red one where it says quarantine protocol. Right? So then that's,
Does that change anything from the plan?
No, because we're probably going to call and say, you gotta keep this classroom home. That's probably what we're gonna quarantine. It will still mean that we don't have enough staff, or, like I said, that's the only time we used red last year. If you wanted to say something like, instead of the 5 or more active positive cases, if we can't staff a classroom,
well,
responsibility.
I was,
But that's the only time we used it last year.
right, okay.
I can wordsmith it then too.
If everyone else is happy with that, that's fine.
So we can't make a motion though, we have to wait for your language. Right? Or unless you guys are comfortable
A
with,
motion with those.
Additions or
okay.
deletions.
no one
The
that-
one statement about the, she had it.
So
What is
So,
it?
so what I've
so
got
would
is
the
we're
board
gonna,
feel more comfortable, obviously, we need to pass this.
We do them separate.
If we did two different motions, if we wanted to test this, we could do two different motions, but we could go ahead and pass this for our COVID plan and our funding.
I recommend we just do it all, I mean, unless someone has.
Are you guys not liking these either, or?
If a parent asks what's your current quarantine protocol, what do you give them?
we tell them that we're using the CDC and the health department guidance. But if we have an outbreak in that classroom, then we will call the health department and say, what do you want us to do? That's what we've done every other time.
It's almost irresponsible to do anything else.
We never closed a classroom without calling the health department last year as well. So we always kept Shrudy's team in the loop.
I think we're planning for the extreme and it seems like we're not seeing the extreme with what's happening.
I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed.
I know, not
I mean, yeah,
but
I really don't want to be up here every board meeting. Jennifer knows that, so talking about COVID.
We will try to make a motion that sort of incorporates the thinking here.
And I think Linda had a little bit of wording that you were.
I'm taking notes, so but I'll listen to what John gives us, so.
So I think it goes kind of back to my first motion. So I move that we, that the district will follow current CDC guidelines, local health department. And if any major disruption, district-wide disruption happens, that it will come to the board.
Got it. If that passes.
I'll second that. Well, are you comfortable with those additions that we talked about where it says only CDC guidance?
Adding local.
You would add and the local health department, yes.
Yeah, I'm adding
I think
local
he
health
had that in
department
there.
on all of those.
And I would second that motion.
And are you including these?
That's why I wanted to make those two motions, but
Okay, that's,
I'd rather
I'm
make
fine
the-
with that. I just wanted,
I'm just kind of focused on the funding,
okay.
to be honest with you.
And I'm giving that to you for now.
Moved and seconded, is there, hate to ask, I mean, any other discussion?
hey, I would just like to say I appreciate the discussion. You know, like we're a board, we're not gonna agree, we shouldn't agree if we're truly representative of the community. And so I just appreciate that everybody stay calm. We stay respectful because I'm sure everybody sees some of the other school boards that get really nasty and ugly and it doesn't need to be that way. So I just want to say I really appreciate our board and the way that we work together. So
I think at the end of the day, we want our teachers, our administrators, and our students to be healthy and to be in school. And I think we all have that common goal, as you shared earlier.
I'm gonna piggyback on that a little bit because it seems like sometimes our questions and discussions are long and redundant, but there is community members listening. And we want to be open to the public and not only do they want to know our thoughts on it, but also that may answer some of their questions and concerns. So sometimes when we ask questions, it's not because we don't know the answer, but we want to share that answer or share those thoughts. So everyone can hear that, so. Okay. I guess we'll vote. All in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. All opposed? Motion passed. Thank you.
thank you very much, Linda.
But we still need,
Yep, we're gonna move on to a motion.
If somebody wants to make a motion.
And you did you say on this one, there was something that needed to be changed?
The date at the top is.
Yeah, the date at the top needs to change, and then there is a section in here where we left it's the responsibility of the family student to monitor. That was in the original document, so I will take those out because we took them out of this as well. So if we took it out of the COVID document, then we will take it out of that as well, so.
On those final two bullets, if they can be indented a bit too, because it was a little confusing. You know, in the event that there are positives in the building, this is what happens. Does that make sense? It's the bottom
It's the following the colon.
three. Okay. Just indented a smidge. Is that just being so picky?
I see what you mean though.
Yes, gotcha. Okay.
I vote that we continue to provide these to parents on the district website with the changes, the small changes that were made.
To make them consistent.
Oh, I make a motion that we.
I'll second.
Any other discussion?
How much staff time does it take to do this weekly or daily?
So it depends on how many we have, obviously, but the nurses send those into Michelle and Nelda in her office. And then they send it to me. I send out an email to all of the administration, including plant facilities. So literally, I just take their emails and send it out to the people that need to know. And then Sylvia at our front desk changes the website. So it's more work for our nurses, but they're gonna have that anyway, dealing with the sick people. So it's like a 5 or 10 minute email for me and a 5 or 10 minutes for her, unless there's a bunch of them, so.
That's the only thing I wanted to ask, because I know under the old plan, when you were having to track everything, we were spending way too much resources tracking COVID opposed to our business at hand. Good point.
Anything else? All in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed?
Motion passed.
Thank you. Thank you, Glenda. And I forgot your name. Thank you very much. I appreciate your information. Okay, and then I lost my agenda. There it is. Went on my screen too. I could look. We're moving on to the discussion of the budget. Maybe we'll all be tired of talking and not have any questions.
I was gonna say, that's a pretty hard act to follow up. Which one was it? Okay, so this evening I am back to request permission from the board to publish the budget. Yeah, I don't know why it's open there. Okay. So what I'm showing you right now is the code 99. This is the form that will be published on our website and the newspaper for 10 days. Essentially, it shows that the board meeting will have the budget meeting or the budget hearing at the board meeting on September 12th at 6:05 p.m. That will happen after the revenue neutral rate, exceeding the revenue neutral rate hearing will happen at 6 p.m. So you'll pass a motion for exceeding the revenue neutral rate at the September 12th meeting, and then permission to adopt the budget. So tonight's request and motion that would need to be made would be to publish the permission to publish the notice of hearing on our website and newspaper for 10 days. Last week, we had a great meeting with your board member Ralston and WEC to review the budget pretty in depth on the binders that were given with all the extra information. So had a great meeting, was able to review several materials with them. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do you have questions?
It's new for some of us.
I just have some discussion, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but the meeting was great that we had with Colleen, and she explained everything to us. There is a little bit of an increase overall in the budget. Can you just give a brief overview of what brought that for the public, just to see why there's just a little bit of an increase?
Sure. So part of the increase goes back to our ESSER funding. That is one of the major ones. So in our federal funds, it's code 07. Because we have 5 million in ESSER 2 and 12 million in ESSER 3, there's a pretty large jump with that. So the budget overall will increase because of those two allocations. We may not spend that full amount here in the next school year, but I have to request the ability to spend that much in the event that we need to. So basically it gives us the opportunity to spend up to that 12 million in the event we want to. It's not necessarily in the plan, but it gives us room to spend higher, especially if there's any situations that kind of come up. So like our capital outlay program. So capital outlay, it's our fund. We do levy taxes to help fund capital outlay expenditures. It's good for the district to be able to plan to spend all of the money so that if we had a major situation come up, we have dollars that we can use to fund projects. Doesn't mean that we have the plans to necessarily spend it to zero, but we have the ability in the event that we need to. It just gives us a backup plan overall. So that was one of the major expenses. There were a couple of required minimum transfers between general fund to at-risk fund that some of those minimum amounts exceeded previous year's amounts. So you'll see a difference in transfers between certain funds this year as well. Overall, that's kind of the major summaries there. Overall, did that touch it?
Yep, and thank you for all your hard work on it.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. I guess we need a motion.
Madam President, I move we approve publication of the notice exceeding the revenue neutral tax rate for the 2022-2023 school year and publication of the 2022-2023 budget.
Is there a second? Any other discussion or questions? Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? Motion passed. Thank you. Okay, I guess you're next, aren't you?
Yep.
New business, building needs assessment results.
Yeah. And
Jason.
Yep. Okay, so to kind of review this, so wanted to give the board the full document so that you can see all the comments from the schools, all the way through to looking at our consolidated plan for the Board of Education. So essentially what we kind of talked about this at that first budget meeting of building needs assessment. This is a requirement this year of a formalized process that we're utilizing. So during our admin retreat returning back for the school year, we had this document available from the state who assembled all the questions, the data points, the spreadsheet as a total. It was shared with our district administration so that they could fill out the data, give us the information on the building needs assessment, as well as the state assessments review. So they provided the information to us. Leadership, we then assembled all of that information into the State Board of Education document, and then also included the board rationale and comments, as in specific strategies that we have identified, opportunities that we have identified to meet the needs of our buildings moving forward for the adoption for the board. So I wanted to provide you the full document so that you could see full information, what the principals are passing on to the board. And then I know it's like a 200-page document. I know there's a lot of gaps in data in there, but overall, I kind of brought it down to that summary document here for the budget considerations. so that, and all of the buildings are in alphabetical order so that you can see their barriers related to student needs, the budget actions, the time for students to achieve those strategies, and the board rationale and comments. So how we're identifying those needs within our budget to strategically address those needs. What did I miss?
Other than it was an opportunity then for us to really kind of hone in on getting with it, directly with building leadership to say, we are kind of requesting, this is what we think it may take to get there. Then from the central office, we can say, this is what we've done in the past. This is where we think we're going in the future with some of the professional development and opportunities that we put to help close those gaps. And so I think we tried to summarize it to say, here are, three to four major things that we're really looking at in the budgeting process to help close those gaps as required by the law.
And you'll see, of course, those trends throughout the document of, staff retention, recruitment, professional development, major items that we have identified in our budget for the next couple of years, and strategies that we're looking to implement to help move that bar. There's not necessarily any board action requested tonight. This was an informational to also give you a chance to ask questions about the format or how we move through the process. At the September 12th meeting, it'll be a very specific process, a roll call vote to adopt the building needs assessment as part of the budget adoption.
Looks like there was a lot of work put into it.
And it's been in law for how long?
It's always been in law since, I believe, since the Montoya case in 2005. But it was a very general, just kind of plan. This last year during the legislative session, it was brought up in the education subcommittee that those were not being done with fidelity. That it was usually done more in a central office kind of location, and the buildings were not having an adequate say. And so through the education subcommittee, they developed that KSDE would enforce the actual law that's been on the books and get a uniform document that every school district would then have to fill out similar, because each district, it was left up to each district on how they did it. They just had to do a needs assessment. And so KSD developed this document. And so all 286 districts across the state should be using the same documentation for doing their needs assessment before they build their budget. And then I think the only thing that we may add is this should be something, this was one of those, this happened June, July. It left us with a short time frame to get to September so that we could publish the budget. This will be something that we start working with building leadership teams in October, November, start having those discussions after they're seeing some of their state assessment data from last year, then start having a little bit deeper discussions with their building leadership teams. And then the building leaders can then take that over the summer as we go through this process again. We were just a little shortchanged on time because this rolled out in July at the same time of changing the revenue neutral rate and all of those other budgetary items.
Well, I know it's attached more like the budget, what you're doing right now, but I think this was great information for the board. We kind of get a snapshot of all of our different buildings. Obviously, we want to kind of have those visuals too, and maybe those one-on-one conversations. But as we start to look at our 5-year plan or the goals for the upcoming year, this is the kind of thing that, kind of gives us some initial guidance as well, or just an initial pulse on the district. And it's not all shocking. I think we all saw the trends of we need more staff, we need qualified staff, those kinds of things. But I really appreciated just kind of getting to see this and get that kind of general input from all of our buildings. So yes, it was a long read, but
But lots of information,
Yeah.
so that's good. Anybody else? Thank you. I guess that will be on the agenda for the next meeting then. Thank you. Okay, Glenda again. And Joe. I didn't read clear to the, I don't read all the instructions, I guess. It's work from home policy. I apologize for leaving you out in the introduction.
Oh, that's okay.
Oh, yeah, you said.
All right, during COVID, I almost hate to bring that up again, but this is where this started. We had people working from home. We had a policy so that if they got COVID and they felt good enough to work, we let them work from home and they filled out a log. As time has continued, as you know, many businesses now have options of working from home. Universities have options of teaching from home. So we talked to Jennifer Cunningham. She gave us some suggestions and some basic kinds of formats that are being used out there in education. And Joe and Jessica and myself kind of put our heads together and came up with what we thought we needed to do and liked from what we did before, send it to Jennifer Cunningham, and she sent some things back. And so we've been going back and forth, and we now think we have a final document for you to look at for allowing people to work from home. We have been following what we've done in the past with COVID. We have had some non-COVID requests to work from home, people that are recuperating from surgery, for example, and can't physically come into work, but could do some kind of desk work at home. If their job allows it, we're considering those. You know, if they have a job like payroll or something like that, that's really important. We want that to get done. So I'm gonna let Joe kind of walk us through some of the high points of this, and I'll scroll through, but you've had the policy. It was sent to you earlier to look at. So we'll just kind of walk through some of.
Right, and we're presenting this to you as a first reading, so don't think you have to make any decisions tonight. But there's a couple of things I do want to point out to y'all. And first and foremost is basically, this policy is kind of to benefit the district. I mean, you know, that's what, we don't want to kind of have it a flippant policy just where anybody could just say, I'm gonna go work from home and so forth. It's more on us as a district to say, no, we understand you're gonna be out for an extended period of time, but we don't have anybody trained to do your position right now. So we do need, if possible, and if your doctor allows it, of course, all this goes into, it kind of covers two policies here, because you got your FMLA, which is a national kind of, you know, legalities that we have to follow on the HR side. So we don't want to make, and we can't make employees work from home. Okay, I mean, if they say, hey, no, I'm sick, I can't do it, whatever, we understand, we got as a district then make that transition to get that, whatever that specific task is, get it covered and get it covered adequately. But just gonna hit you a few highlights here. First off, it's a privilege and it's granted from the school district. This form must be completed and signed by all parties prior to any type of work going on at home. And basically, we're asking that the supervisor actually submit this. So if the supervisor sees that they're gonna lose an employee for a period of time, and they've already talked to the employee that think that they can do part of their job function, and we need it done, then the supervisor will submit this form to HR and request it. We do say in this policy that remote work is not suitable for all employees. I mean, you know, that there's some jobs that are within the district that you have to be face to face and in person to get it done. Allowing work arrangements is solely at the discretion of the school district. And that, again, to protect the employee, the supervisor may not require an employee to work remotely. There's some other language in here where we don't have to provide, you know, internet service or anything like that. It's something that, I mean, it's going to have to be there at the. We won't provide any type of, you know, desk or supplies or anything like that. If there's something that the employee desperately needs, he can get that approved by the supervisor. And if the supervisor feels like, yeah, you do need this, then, you know, we can look into providing that stuff. And I highlighted that it is not our responsibility for basic installation of telephone service, internet service, cable service, and so forth like that. We kind of take that as a given that the employee has those capabilities if you're going to utilize the internet service and so forth at home. Important thing is work logs will be filled out on the time spent. And basically with most of these plans, we want that even outlined prior to the employee leaving. So, you know, I think Linda mentioned payroll. So we need you to cover payroll for this deal, and it's gonna take you, 8 hours to get this done over a period of a week or whatever. So that's something we desperately need. So will your doctor allow it? Can you fulfill those obligations and so forth? So it's something where we just don't want it flippantly being where the employee can just, hey, I spent X amount of time doing something where we really don't have documentation that was being covered, or that time was really spent on that task, if that makes any sense. I mean, this is really, I don't know, we had the lawyers look at it and so forth, and we try to really streamline this process. This is not something that we want to really jump into, but the lawyers talking to us that we do need to have something like this in place. And then of course, the employee should not have any overtime work unless it's prior approved by the supervisor itself. So though, again, the task that the supervisor wants them to do is already lined out before the employee takes their leave and so forth. And then we already kind of know the allotted amount of time it's going to take and so forth for those to get done. And plus the employee feels and their doctor feels like those tasks can be completed. So that's kind of where we're at. And it is a new animal. I mean, so like
Does
Linda's.
this affect family medical leave?
Say again?
How does this affect family medical leave?
Well, that's what I'm saying, is if the employee says, hey, listen, I just can't do it. I mean, then we're not, we can't obligate that employee to do it. If the doctor says, well, you really need to keep your, I'm gonna use a leg elevated or whatever, if there's just a reason why they can't come in. Because I feel like, really, if you broke your leg, you can probably still kind of come in and we can elevate, we can do whatever, but, so that's probably a bad example. But anyway, let's just go back to that.
So like if somebody is on family medical leave, say for having a baby,
Okay,
they can still use this. They can still do this.
correct.
Okay.
Correct. If the district wants them to do that's something that, typically when a mom's doing that stuff and kind of speak with forked tongue here, because a lot of teachers want to do lesson plans, want to do everything else to make sure that but they're not obligated. We don't want to obligate them to do that. So a lot of them spend time doing that prior to them leaving. But yeah, going back to that case scenario, we could as a district ask them to do stuff like that.
But it's still on their choice.
It's still on their choice. And again, it's still going back to the district, if the district feels like that's a need. I mean, that's why we have, now granted, again, speaking with forked tongue, that's why we have substitutes, but we're in desperate need of substitutes. So, but typically the substitute will cover all the needs in that classroom with the teacher already leaving lesson plans and stuff like that on a long-term leave like that.
Any question?
Well, if y'all think of anything, feel free to give me a call, give Linda a call. And then, I mean, like I said, we just wanted y'all to take a look at this and we'll just kind of go from there. It's just definitely a work in progress. And again, we definitely want to make it where it's more of a, the district is asking for this. This is something the district sees a need for and needs that function covered as opposed to just being requests made from employees.
So would this be added to the employee handbook at some point?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not going to be considered policy, but even though it says policy, but it will be something that will be added to the handbook. I guess we'll look at it, and if we have questions or contact either of you.
Sounds good,
Send them
sounds
to
good.
Dr. Dominguez and we'll get them answered for you.
That's right.
Sounds good, thank you.
I appreciate y'all.
We are ready for board open discussion. Start. Okay.
I can't remember everything about, a week ago, we had
Buddy Barry, yeah.
Buddy.
Buddy Barry, yes, sir.
Yeah, I had a dog named Buddy. So immediately I could relate to this guy. He even had a joke he started out having to do with that, but that was an outstanding speaker for that gathering. And I would I would have taken more notes if I felt like we couldn't get a copy of his presentation. Maybe it's, it's proprietary, but he had such a fascinating story, first of all, and then a very energized description of surprise and delight. He had three elements there, and I don't remember all three of them. But in his description of taking a very challenged school district and schools, and then over a period of time with basically energy and the passion that teachers have for why they're there, a great story in converting that to a very high achieving school district and an amazing set of schools where kids have, and a lot of innovations we have in this district, and he sort of rattled them off. Of course, this is over a period of the last 15 years. A lot of technology, a lot of access to technology for families that were in living circumstances where they just didn't have an internet access. And really, a few standard things that most of our, particularly the experienced teachers, I think, know. Not only the value of surprise and delight them in the classroom and incorporate that with the curriculum, but even going further in how you set up your room and how you give students choices. Sort of I think his message that I heard was, you really impair a child's learning capabilities when you don't give them a choice. We all know different learning styles, and some kids, they're very good at taking information and spitting it back out. But in taking information and processing and what that means to them, and then asking questions and developing sort of their own ownership of the information is really education. And it was really fun to hear his stories, and I could go into some of the examples and a couple of his really bad jokes. But it was just well done. I just want to, surprise and delight is not only just for the kids, but it was for the staff too. And just an example of that, I think there's some discussion recently in making sure that we have ice machines in the schools. And maybe even not just ice, but maybe sonic ice, and how that can be a surprise and delight in the day of a teacher and staff. And we should be, I think he had another example of it looked like a copy machine, but it was a pancake maker. It was just a desktop, push the button and out comes a nice warm pancake. Things like that could be supplied to teachers. Those are attaboys to the great job that they're doing. And it really pumps up the day and it makes a difference. So I think in the beginning part of the school here, it's always that way in the first part of the school, everybody getting back to classes, figuring out the transportation, special ed and the challenges we've got going there. There's certainly surprise, but helping everybody really pitching in together. It's a sense that I got to make it work. And you're just going to have some hiccups, but we're going to settle into school, and then we're going to see the talent of those teachers, and it's going to be great. And helping them with that surprise and delight. I just found that speaker to be not only very inspiring, but very appropriate. So good job, well done.
Jackie? I don't have much. I did hear from several parents and even a couple teachers that they were very appreciative of the longer week of summer on the calendar, even though it extended the day a little. They were very appreciative of that week to kind of sit back and plan and catch their breath. Did hear a lot of comments and been emailed and called and talked to a lot about the fifth grade music situation. So I do hope that can be resolved pretty quickly, and those kids can still get a chance to participate.
Could I ask a question on since you brought that up? That's certainly accurate. At some point, I'd kind of like in the middle of Mike or something, status of where we're at with that. That's a passion, I think, for the community, if I can put it in those terms. I think Summer Miller was very appropriate in her comments from the standpoint that when we look at the Rose standards and really trying to keep kids motivated to come to school, and it's reading, writing, and arithmetic, there's stuff that we really got to help them learn. But there's also then the inspirations in the arts that are huge. And to the extent we can, I know budgets are challenging, and then particularly help staff. But sometimes there are opportunities if we look around a little bit, and I know we all know this, for people that maybe aren't a certified teacher, but they have a passion for music, and we can sort of plug some holes. I hope we can do that. That's just, I think, something that elevates them in their achievements all through their educational career with us. So I'm sorry, I just.
You're fine. Don?
I'm just excited about this new school year. I've had a lot of parents and a lot of students reach out and say, hey, we got kicked off with a lot of momentum, a lot of different energy. So I appreciate that. I appreciate your leadership. All of you all has been out in the buildings and interacting with the teachers and the students. And it's just great to see and the excitement of the district. So I appreciate that. I know we breached probably the hardest topic tonight that any school board anywhere has to talk about is COVID. And I think the common goal of this board is to protect our teachers, protect our students, and keep our kids in class. And I would echo what Dana said, that, you know, I think that's a common goal of this board, and we're working together to try to do that. So I know it's tough. I know there's going to be people that will agree, people that will disagree, but we're trying to do what's best for the district and move forward to hit our goals of education. So.
I just go back to Summer and Haley. I have also been approached about that from several people, and I know it's important. So I just hope that challenge them and staff and everybody to kind of come up with some kind of solution to hopefully rectify that for this school year. I think it's important, and I think it means a lot to a lot of people. So.
Dana?
Yeah, I just to kind of piggyback on what other people said, I think we're off to a great start in the new school year. I think we've definitely had a lot of change. There is a lot of change happening in the district right now, and that can be really scary. It can be really fun and exciting. It can be challenging. And I just hope everybody approaches it with, no matter how you approach it with some grace. We're all still trying to figure things out in certain respects, and that goes for the board as well. We have new people, we have older individuals, but I'm really excited and feel real hope and just feel really great about where we're at as a board, because I think just what happened tonight exemplifies the kind of leadership that we're trying to exhibit and have that expectation from the top down, if you believe in that kind of thing. And that is, we don't think the same, and it would not be conducive to, a diverse district if we did. And it's hard sometimes to come up here and articulate. It's hard sometimes to try to understand exactly what someone is saying in a matter of sentences, or in a short amount of time, sometimes that we have up here. And I am just so appreciative of this board that I feel like we try to approach it with respect, even though we may sometimes not articulate things well. Maybe things might rub us a little wrong, but we don't get upset by that, or at least we don't show it. But we were definitely missing Tammy tonight to have that vote. So we didn't have a tie, but in all honesty, I think what we did tonight maybe had a better example, or maybe a better start of something for the district, because we can work together, we can problem solve, we can compromise. to find the best solution, maybe not a solution that makes everybody happy, but that brings people together and maybe provides that greater solution rather than just butting heads or, deciding that we can't find a solution. So Dr. Dominguez has been really, bold about saying, we need to articulate positivity in every way that we can when it comes to the district. And even if you, might have some grumbles, maybe things aren't working out perfectly, maybe we don't make decisions that you agree with, have a conversation, try and get involved, do those kinds of things. And, we do have an open board position, sadly, and I'm sure it'll be on the next agenda, but you would be coming on to a very positive board. So I encourage, if you're not hearing your perspective, if you're not hearing, if you don't feel like you're represented on this board, I encourage people to run or get somebody who has the time and energy and maybe can have that perspective on the board. Because I think we're open to that. And I think this is a good board to be a part of. So again, I just thank you guys for tonight. I think we had a good discussion. It was tough, but I think we made a good choice for our students and our staff and our families. So I thank the leadership, all the work that goes into that, the passion of our teachers that presented tonight, and administrators. So just looking forward to a great school year.
Can I say a kudos? I appreciate Danny, you wearing the mask. And that's one of those things where I hope we always work to recognize that people that choose to wear a mask, they're doing it for everybody else's safety. And that's essentially what you were doing here. And so I really respect and appreciate that. I hope we can, because my tendency a few months ago was, what's wrong with that person that wearing a mask? Frankly, being candid. But really, I've come back around to, I really appreciate that individual if they value me and others enough to wear that mask. So I hope we can, put kudos where kudos are due regarding our social interactions. And I certainly want to recognize you for, whether it was forced, recommended on you or not, you did it, and that keeps others safe. So thank you very much.
Well, you weren't at the retreat because I was in denial and just talked in everybody's faces with my COVID breath. So.
Well, Ben, I want to thank you for all your compliments to the district at the start of the school year, because we have a lot to celebrate. And I want to thank the leadership. We've had a lot of change, and you've said that. I feel like I'm repeating a lot of things you said, but I've seen everyone out in the community and in the schools and all the open houses. It looked like they really celebrated their buildings. And so that makes students and parents excited to be part of that. Our district touches every part of our community. So it's important that we celebrate that and we acknowledge that. And I really do encourage community members, like Dana said, to get involved, whether it's a seat on the board or your PTO or committee, or just attending our district, our activities, even if it's at the high school level, or our schools at every level put on opportunities for the community to get involved and make an impact on our kids. So I'm going to celebrate that tonight. Thank you, Dr. Dominguez, for the light you've shined by being out in the community so much and interacting with everyone. So I look forward
I'd like to finish it up if we can.
It's your turn.
We're definitely focusing on our bright spots. And so safety and security always will be first, our threat assessment, and that process will continue to hone in on that. Our transition plan is continuing this week, our building efficiencies and staffing and just, as far as the paint, the carpet, the HVACs, all that, we have to continue to do that. But, and you're right. And everybody is moving forward, the staff, stakeholders, definitely the leadership team has worked overtime. June 1's when we landed here and just the inertia built up, but is phenomenal, but we all need grace. So for sure. And maybe we're none of us worthy of it, but the truth is we're going to schools. We got a great school district. We need to focus on the bright spots, work on our strengths, and then keep moving forward. And we will have an amazing year, and it'll keep moving forward. So yeah, very exciting for the new year.
Our next board meeting will take place on Monday, September 12th at 6 p.m. in the board meeting room. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Madam President, I motion that we adjourn for the night.
Second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Switch it up on you.